dude, this person like totally just destroyed me, like killed me. And it was hilarious. He said, new vocalist sounds like he does YouTube covers. The cool days of this band are long gone.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. We just love Vatican here over at Scoped Exposure, and I'm really excited to have... I was talking to Mike before we were getting going. I don't know if this is the third member or third Vatican interview, or if it's the fourth, because we had two members do one. But all things being said, we got Mike Sugars on the podcast. Epic last name. I will say
yeah, I get that a lot.
I have a dope last name. I know that. But vocalist for Vatican, coming on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, man.
Yes, I'm very excited. I'm a big fan of the show. So I saw the interview request and I was like, fuck yeah, I'm coming in.
Dude, I love that you are a fan. That always is sometimes I get caught off guard sometimes that it's like, I do see the numbers come for episodes, but then it's like surprising on who those people actually are.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that you're in some of those analytics. For the visual and audio listeners, you want to tell people where you're calling in from today?
Yeah, I am in Denver, Colorado. We are on an off day from our tour with Spite, Boundaries, and Body Box, and No Zodiac was on it earlier. They'll be on the last two shows of the tour, but they were on like the first like 40% of the tour.
Cool. Yeah. Denver is actually where my mom was born and raised. So a little fun fact there. So
nice.
Yeah. So it's been a long time since I've been there, but it's like I live in Alberta now. So I wasn't raised by the mountains or anything like that, but now it's like I'm so close and now I just can't get enough of that. So.
Yeah. No, I love Alberta. I actually, whenever I was in my old band, I technically am still in that band, but whenever I was in my old band, we did a full Canada tour. So we started all the way in Quebec City and then moved our way all the way to Vancouver and then, come down into California from there and stuff. But I love Alberta.
Yeah. Respect for you doing the entire Canadian tour, because most times when bands say North American or Canadian tour, they just do Ottawa, Toronto, or just dip up into Vancouver. It's the Prairie Provinces is, that's a huge reason of why I started Scoped Exposure, is try to give more awareness to the entirety of Canada and especially the western half of it.
Yeah.
So glad that you're.
But there's also there's that fest coming up with like Knock Loose and Inclination on it, and city is escaping my name right now.
It's here in Calgary. That's you're talking about Wild Rose Hardcore Fest.
Yeah. Yep. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. There's a lot of great fests. There's Wild Rose. The weekend after is actually our Scope 5-year anniversary fest as well. So that has like Strife, Tsunami, Scout. I think by the time that this episode comes out, we'll have our updated lineup, so I can just drop the news here in case someone didn't see it. We've added I Am from Dallas on the fest as well. And we also having like Ballista, Gates to Hell, Constrained, a bunch of like killer up-and-coming bands. And then 2 weeks after that, all the way out in Toronto is Hold Your Ground Fest. So shout out to Jessa. That has Mind Force, Pain of Truth, Never Ending Game, and Dare, and a ton of other. So it's
very fun show.
The fall is all for Canada, in my opinion. So
yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. So Mike, I'm really excited to talk to you today. Obviously, big Vatican fan. I've had multiple members on the podcast already, but with you guys just dropping a new album, it's like really timely to talk about Vatican.
Yeah.
and all those kind of things. But before we get into the music talks, it's tradition here to check a bev for the episode. So I should have checked with you before we're going officially if you got yours all ready to go.
I'm here.
Let's go. Nice choice.
Yep. This is my favorite flavor that they've done recently. So I thought it would be very appropriate for me to get an ultra gold, but I'm like already caffeined out for the day. So I was like, I'm just gonna do an easy thing, and I'm gonna do the Liquid Death.
Yeah. When I was down there for work a couple times, I made it my goal to make sure I could try all the flavors because we don't have the flavored ones up here in Canada yet.
Oh yeah.
And the lime one is definitely the best. It's the most like the word I'm going to use is like controlled, while the mango and the berry one just seem a little too like not really sure if it wants to be a little bit of the flavor or a lot of the flavor.
I think the mango is a lot of the flavor, and I don't really typically go for like mango stuff anyway. So like I was never like meant to really care for it that much, but I think it's totally fine. But the lime, this goes in.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a hot take as far as fruit goes, but I think because I ate a mango just, straight, just straight raw eating a mango. And I had a realization. I was like, mangoes are like one of the best fruits ever. But I feel like mango flavored anything is just really hard to like.
I know.
Really
I feel the same
finalize
way.
It. Yeah.
I feel the same way. Maybe like a popsicle. Sure. Like you can do that. But like other than that, I don't really care for like mango drinks, candy. It's not for me.
Yeah. You're going to have to like report on what's going on in this restaurant that you're calling in from at some point.
So I'm in a noodles and company, and it's like it's pretty dead in here, and the kitchen staff is like they're pretty much just all talking shit about the rest of their people. like from what I gather, this is the dream team, right. And everybody else. It's like I've worked in a million kitchens, so I know how this goes. But it's just like we have dream team here. Everybody else can die.
I love how you're calling in during like a probably not really busy time for service or anything, but it's still loud just because of the people in the kitchen. So shout out to them if they ever find this podcast.
Yeah, they're absolutely going in, and you know what? Honestly, good for them. I'm glad they can have space to do
Did you
this.
buy the Liquid Death from them, or did you have to bring that in from somewhere else?
Oh, there's a Target like a block down the street, and I walked in with it.
I was about to give them like a major shout out if they sold Liquid Death, but
that would be awesome.
Yeah.
No, I'm typically looking for a Liquid Death. That's like my go-to beverage. Like if I'm just getting water or something at like a gas station, and it's always hit or miss. So I saw it in this Target, especially like the flavored ones. Those are even more hit and miss. So I found that today, and I was like, yo, this goes in.
Well, I guess we're matching a little bit because I'm drinking one of those.
And those are great. Those are so crisp.
Oh, yes. It's pretty funny because like I feel like as this podcast season has gone on, and anyone who's been an avid watcher or listener or person that gives a fuck has seen the stacks slowly decrease over time. So right now it's just like a 3x6 situation.
Yeah, it's obscured by your body right now.
Yeah. It is like I've talked about it before because I'm a big person and believe I like being able to say things and then being able to reference it later on as things just progress. I think documenting whether it's like live shows or conversations through this podcast is really something I think a lot about. And so
giving yourself like a start point. It's like, here's the Tower of Liquid Death episode number here. And then it's like episode 3, whatever. We've completed the mountain.
Right. Yeah. But like by the time we're at like maybe episode 246 or whatever, if a big goal of mine for season 3 of the podcast is to be sponsored officially by Liquid Death. I feel Liquid Death has always been like the girlfriend playing a little too hard to get at times, and rightly so, because Liquid Death is the epitome of beverage sponsorships in my opinion.
Yes,
especially for our style of show. So I'm I'm in the process of trying to figure out how I actually do the official pitch and be like, let's call a spade, because you sending me a ton of product is dope, but I want to like be in a harmonious relationship, if that makes sense.
And I can't even imagine like what the ratio is of people that come on to the podcast and have a Liquid Death in hand, and they're just like, yeah, I mean, I just kind of figured that was the vibe, right?
Right. And it's also like, I know the amount of people that are maybe just outside of our scene that are still a part of the music community that like I expose them to Liquid Death, or like, especially in Canada, I can confidently say I don't think there's any other Canadian that rides for Liquid Death as hard as I do. So I think some dues. I'm hoping to build up for some dues to be paid. I'm just talking about Liquid Death and my shit too much.
Whenever the Canadian rep position opens, you better be getting first dibs.
Oh fuck yes, brother. So I'm drinking that. I also have my favorite flavor of Red Bull on hand because I think balance of both worlds is important. But I'm gonna cheers my Liquid Death to you, Michael, and we're excited to have you on the podcast.
Cheers.
Let's go. All of that dead air was totally worth that proper, swig that I needed.
Yeah.
But so Michael, obviously we're going to talk about the new record and all things Vatican, but I always like to get a bit of context as far as the guests that I have on the show, especially if it's their first time here. So
for sure,
tell me a little bit about your like heavy music origin story. Tell me about like the first time you heard guitar music or screaming or breakdowns, however you want to spin it.
For sure. I mean, dude, it really starts with Guitar Hero 2, like 8th grade, like freshman year, because like that Guitar Hero 2, like that's where they had In Flames and All That Remains. They also had like that Death Clock Thunder Horse song and like a couple other like funny ones, or like there was even that Census Fail track that was on there.
Right.
So like that was kind of like my first go. I heard 6 by All That Remains, and like I thought it was really fun to play on Guitar Hero. Mm-hmm. And then I just started like listening like through that, and like I kind of was like going down like a bit of like a normie, like civilian path to like finding music and everything. And then I remember in particular, like in science class my freshman year, there were just like upwards of like 6 people in that class in varying grades, and that were like all in bands from like my hometown, and like would play in Indianapolis or in like southern Indiana and stuff, which is where I'm from, by the way. I'm born and raised central Indiana, so gotcha. So like they get me into the music, and that's where like I find out about like Lamb of God, As I Lay Dying, Under Oath, Devil Wears Prada, lots of just like staple metalcore of like 2007 and on, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I start playing in some like local bands from the area, and really kind of all like starts actually lifting off when me and my friend Nico, we started a band called Conquerors, like right after high school. And that eventually went on to become a band called Church Tongue. And like the Conquerors Church Tongue run was essentially from like 2012 to like 2019, 2020. And then during the pandemic, when everything kind of slows down, like we had a new EP that was getting ready to come out at the time. But like we were just kind of like, sitting on it, but also like slowly getting everything ready for it to put out. And then Nico joined Knocked Loose, and then I was like, okay, maybe like I'm like, kind of checked out on music. I don't know, but not like anything's happening right now for me to be like decide that I'm clocked out or anything.
Sure.
But then like 2 weeks after Nico joins Knocked Loose, I joined Vatican. And I remember just giving him that call, and I was like, that's funny how that works out. So so now since then, now I've been in Vatican for a year and a half ish, like just under a year and a half. Well, at least like officially, like we released first Vatican songs with me on it in April 2021, but really I was in Vatican in October 2020 and no one knew. But so really I'm coming up on 2 years. Yeah. So I'm a Midwest boy, born and raised. I got into metal and hardcore in high school, and I've been playing just a lot of underground shit and like definitely like touring and playing to a lot of nobody for a really long time. And now I'm in Vatican, and we just put out the new record, and that is a pretty cool time. And it seems like people like it, and that is always a good sign.
Right.
And yeah, we're just kind of living it up right now. And yeah, I think that's a pretty like short summary of how I got here.
Yeah. And let's wrap up I'm just kidding.
Yeah. We're good. We got it. Yeah. We got his story.
I do appreciate you talking about like growing up in Indianapolis and like talking about some of those bands that you mentioned from like especially a lot of the like the Christian metalcore stuff, like the As Lay Dyings, the Devil Wears Pradas.
I was deep in it.
Like that's like, neighboring territory to a lot of those states, right? So it's like,
oh, it totally is. I'm a total Christ core veteran.
Dude, I've talked about it multiple times on the podcast. Like that is my initial introduction into just louder, aggressive music. It was the Demon Hunters, the Underoaths, the
Sleeping Giant and Pending
Sleeping
Doom,
Giant,
Calling to Preserve, Venya, Advent. Like you just keep going down the list, and like it's just like that's pretty much where I came from. So
is Hosian giving you a back rub?
Hosian is getting something out of my backpack because Hosian loses a lot of stuff, especially whenever we're on the road. So I hold Hosian's wallet for him.
You're the Mary Poppins of the entire band, it sounds like.
I mean, I wouldn't say the entire band. I'm definitely Hosian's Mary Poppins.
Just for Hosian.
Okay. And in many ways, he is my Mary Poppins. And cleans up things that I have no way of being able to help myself in, because I just we have a good thing going, huh? Yeah, get out of here.
Yeah, it's really convenient that only people can only hear what you're saying versus him, so you could just say whatever you want as far as
exactly
what he's saying. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's like, it's a huge thing that I like to talk about on the podcast, because like, I think a lot of people get into this weird mindset where it's like the only true way of getting into hardcore and like DIY music is like when you actually got in through, Madball and Agnostic Front and all those things. But I think like everyone should be like, everyone's journey into this should be celebrated and talked about, and like as much as Agnostic Front is way the fuck over here, and then there's like Underoath way over here, those bands, in my opinion, still had a similar level of impact, I would say, on their respected audiences.
Totally.
And there's still some kind of through line that's probably way closer than like, Agnostic Front to like T-Pain, or Underoath to Taylor Swift or something like that.
No, so, I 100% agree with that. Like, while it may be like different ends of the spectrum, like the bands that we're talking about are still good for the genre as a whole, especially for that time. And like, and today we have new bands that are good for the genre and stuff. But yeah, I definitely entered in that way. And being from Indiana as well, like my hometown Christ core bands were like Gwen Stacy and Haste the Day. So
dude, okay. When Everything Falls was one of the very first songs I learned how
to
play guitar. Insane record.
Dude, that's a great record. Pressure the Hinges is an awesome record. Attack of the Wolf King, that's a good record. Then there's the one before When Everything Falls. I always forget this one, but that's the one with Blue 42 and like American Love on it and stuff. And it's like, dude, that was real like hometown hero shit for me, because like I remember, in particular, my science teacher in my freshman and sophomore year He grew up being like best friends with Jimmy Ryan, the original singer, the dude who was on with it When Everything Falls. And so like he was rooted in like metal and hardcore, but obviously he's like 30 and I'm 16. So like our relationship was funny because he's my teacher and he can't just talk to me about hardcore. He has to talk to me about science as well because that's his job.
But
it's
he funny
put me
that
onto a
like
lot of shit.
That age bracket now, it's like I'm almost 30 myself and I have friends that are like 16, 17 that are just in the local scene here. But it's like it's such a weird thing when you're on the other side of it. You're like, you're a fucking dinosaur talking to me. And then it's like, I am the older person, but it's pretty normal.
that kind of stuff happens to us when we're in Savannah. Like we have like younger like people that are involved in music in like Savannah that like those are our homies. Like we hang out with them all the time and it's like, yeah, I've got 10 years on you, dude. Like, I know I'm like, fucking geriatric to you at this point, but like, no, that kind of stuff was like very formative for me. And it was just like, it was so adjacent and like, just like deeply rooted in lore as well, because it wasn't just him that was involved in that kind of world. Like whenever I was a senior, the bass player of Gwen Stacy, he grew up in my hometown and his mom was my teacher in my senior year. And Brent would come in and like, come see his mom at school and stuff. And I would be there just like, I have no idea who you are. Right. Question mark. Like, and it's just funny. And like, even like my other teacher, in that same class, he was also like a little bit older than me. He was like 26 or something like that. And again, I'm a teenager and he helped put me onto a lot of stuff and was like, also just like really like, he was like a big reason why I continued playing music after high school and stuff. So lots of stuff, and like you said, like, that's just kind of like where I came in. And whereas like someone who grew up in like the Northeast, it's like, yeah, you definitely grew up on like just like good traditional hardcore bands. And I eventually found that second, pretty much, where it's like I was coming into like Christian metalcore and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure if it would come at the later part of the discussion or earlier on, but you brought up that one of the first bands that you started was with Nico, which was Church Tongue, which is kind of still a band, but it's like maybe like on pause or inactive, and feel free to
very much on pause. Yeah.
Okay. So, but I do think, that was a talking point that was interesting because I think I had heard the name Church Tongue, but like never really like checked you guys out or listened to it. But it was that, call it the pandemic release that I was like, oh my God, like this band, like I felt like how are not more people talking about this? And then it was like shortly after I was like, oh, like Knock Loose picked up Nico and then you picked up Vatican. And I was like, well, I guess it makes sense in the sense of like the other members or anyone who's involved in the Church Tongue machine can bring that into other groups. But yeah, talk to me about that, like, because I think with everything that's happened, the good, bad, and the ugly, I think one major takeaway is that there was a lot of bands that either stopped being bands because of things, and there was a lot of new projects that like got started, or certain bands got like a second wind and they're killing it now versus maybe they're just kind of like a mid-bill fest spot kind of band. So talk to me about like that, the initial point of joining Vatican in that state of like, you were mentioning like, I don't know how much I'm going to do this going forward.
Yeah. I mean, like it was a weird moment, and it was kind of like cosmic if you, whatever, like you, the listener, subscribe to, but like, it was like definitely like a stars aligning kind of thing. And it was strange because when Nico reached out to us and told us that like he was going to do that, he presented it as like a question, as if like he was like, do you guys think I should do this? And I just remember texting him back, I'll literally fucking kill you if you don't do it. Like,
Right.
I'm like, that's a huge opportunity. And like, we like all the other guys in Knock Loose, like we've all known each other since way back. We played Knock's second show. I'm pretty sure it was either their second or their fourth, one of those two numbers. But like, we go way back, and like, there's always been like respect and love there. So it was like, dude, this is just a natural progression for you. Like, just go. You've got your ticket. Please go have fun. It will be great. I think I'll chill. And because I didn't have anything else musically lined up. I was working at a car insurance company. Like, I don't know. I was like just getting engaged too. So I was like, okay, everything I see where everything's lining up. It looks like I'm going to own a Prius soon or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. I might get one of those like lunchbox Scion cars, something. Just something like
where it's got the stow and go and the seats go down all the way.
Just mad fucking pedestrian. Like,
I know the vibe. I've seen those people.
Yeah, and I was like, maybe that's the life. Maybe that's where I was meant to be. But like, then I mean, Hosian, he just kind of hit me up out of the blue, and it was only because of espionage. Like, I was buying espionage stuff because I'm that's all my shit too, and that's everything that I put all of my energy towards when it's like, that's my thing. I play games, I watch anime, like it's my shit, and that's a lot of people's shit. And that's why, Hosian is able to do so well with that. But we're talking like just kind of like on Instagram, and he like just kind of cold messages me out of nowhere. He's like, yo, dude, what's up? And I'm like, fuck, I don't think we've ever talked. Like, even
I've given you money. We've done business deals, but never that direct line of communication, right?
Like, I'm your silent customer who comes in.
Yes.
Like I'm the dude who like comes in the coffee shop and I just get a cold brew, no cream, no sugar. I don't say a word, even whenever you say a joke to me. And it's really because I'm like mad anxious. And then I get the drink and I'm just like, thank you. And I leave. like that's me and Hosian's relationship at that point. So I was like, kind of like, just like, damn, like, okay. I mean, not that I'm not down to just like casually fellowship with anyone, you know what I mean? But I was just like, oh shit.
Sometimes you just know when those messages come through that there's like, it's not that like, it's like, oh, we're not here just for a friendly chat. Like, there's something coming down the pipe. It could be good, bad, or ugly, but there's like a level of like anticipation.
Yeah. So I was just kind of like, I was just mad curious because I was just like, dude, where the fuck could this end up going? Like, because we had went back and forth for maybe like a day and a half before the question was popped. Right. And he was like, what do you think about Vatican? Like, kind of thing. And it's really funny because so I am notoriously hard to reach. Because my phone is like either super dead or I'm convinced that I responded to you, but I didn't. I had it typed out, kind of thing. I'm straight up the fucking worst when it comes to that. So I actually kind of Hosian. I didn't even open the message. I thought I'd like, dude, just fuck me forever. I left the message unread for like an entire week, and then I opened it and I was like, oh, he just asked me, like, it's that like Shaq meme, like his eyes light up, it's like real shit.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, damn. And since then, obviously, like, we're, like best fucking friends now. And we've talked about like where he was in that. And he was like, I thought you ghosted me. And I was about to start sending some very desperate messages to people that I did not want over you as a singer. Yeah.
It really reminds me of, I don't know the actor's name, but the dude who plays Superman in the DC universe.
Henry Cavill.
Yeah. So there's an interview of him where he was talking about the call from Zack Snyder to play Superman. he missed the first one because he's playing World of Warcraft, which I was like, that's so fucking
Fire.
just let me finish this game or this raid or whatever, and I'll call you back. But Zack Snyder's a busy guy. He could have just called the next A-list actor and then off to the races. But
exactly,
it seems like a very
I almost
similar.
missed my Vatican call.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I do think it's cool because like Vatican, I think is a great band. Church Tongue, I think is a great band. But I think there has been a lot of like realigning of different either priorities or things that you actually want to do versus like I've been in this band for so long, and like I think that there have been a lot of bands that have like since the pandemic have like stayed true and they're the exact same as they were, and they're just it's right back at like back to business. Like Knock
or they're
Loose
better than they ever have been.
Or that. Like I feel like Knock Loose is a great example of that. I think like Terror is a great example of that.
Dude, that new Terror record, that is straight up. That could be my favorite Terror record potentially.
Yeah, it's really really good. Like, and having Scott like just recently on the podcast, it was like
I watched that. It was a good episode.
That. Thank you. But I do think that there are some bands like and maybe it's not band specifically, but it's like members, and like I've had some people I've had the opportunity to talk to them about it, and some I'm just it's purely speculative. But like someone like Anaya who did drums for Dare started Zulu just before the pandemic, and now Zulu's popping off, and he was like, I need to step down from drums, and now Trey's doing that. I also think of someone like Michael who's just playing guitar in Hangman, and now is fronting arguably one of the most hype hardcore bands of our time right now. And it's like Hangman's on hold, hanging up to dry if you want to, go analogy wise on it. But I do think it's cool that like, with everything that happened, it kind of like put some pressure on some situations and shook some things up. And I think coming out of a lot of things, it's just really cool to see like people killing it, people like fronting bands that have never done it before.
Yes.
I think it's really I think it's ultra interesting. I think going to shows and being into heavy music, it's a great time to do that right now. And I think it's extra interesting if you like got through the period of like no shows for like a year and you are watching all these changes happening in real time.
Totally. I mean, the genre and its subsequent adjacent branches, in my opinion, like we're in one of the best places we've probably been in 10 plus years, give or take. Like, I really think that like coming back, like even if it is kind of like, a re-rolling of like people who have been in music for a while or new projects coming from like people who are younger, this, that, and the other, right? Anything under the umbrella of things that are just awesome that have been coming out or have been playing and have been exciting, and able to kind of just like grow at either like a surprising rate or just like such a like awesome steady rate as a whole is great. And I just feel like we're in one of those situations where like the tides are sitting so high for the genre that like it's just like it's done nothing but create great opportunities for people to be able to come in and like push their creativity and just keep adding to the wave, and like and things just keep going, and things are good, I think, as a whole across the board, whether you're a legacy band or you're new. This has been debatably more of some of the most exciting material coming from any of these projects that I don't know, I feel like I've seen since like early 2010s.
Yeah, I do think that like I like the analogy that you were building with like the wave, because like for me, hardcore, even though it is a genre, to me I use it a lot more as like an umbrella term where it's like the community. And I think like the bands who are doing metal, metalcore, new metal, street punk, power violence, thrash, like anything that's under that umbrella, I think builds to that wave analogy that you're saying. And it just like, it's just so many people can ride it. It's very clear that a lot of people will like, I don't like this, and they just like aim to brace for the wave, but they'll just get like just destroyed, you know?
Yeah,
So,
water is a very powerful force, and also just does not care how loud you want to be about it. You can get swept up. So that's just kind of another one of those things, and that might be like another like little analogy, I guess. But it really is one of those things, I think, where it's like I don't think you can protest or like gatekeep it. I think it's going to continue just growing, and like I'm on the internet. Everyone's on the internet. We see how many people talk about like gatekeeping the genre, right? And there are some out of pocket things that definitely get said and or done, where it's like maybe it's not for everyone, but it's kind of unavoidable. This is the byproduct of something becoming really big and really awesome. And also this is the byproduct of bands that are good for the genre continuing to rise. Like when you look at some of the obvious ones, like say Turnstile or Knocked Loose, or on the other end of the spectrum, a band like say Lorna Shore, like just like the people who are like really, really pushing it right now. It's like, yeah, what are we going to do? Stop it.
Right.
You know,
yeah, exactly.
Stop it so that it's still fun for us and not like new people that want to come in. They'll figure it out. Right. You know, like I don't think I was like everyone's favorite hardcore fan when I was 22. You know, like, but like I was a hardcore fan, and now I'm almost 30, and I'm probably much more tolerable. By comparison, it's just like, dude, just let them do their time. Let them keep coming out. And if it's not for them, they'll be out in 2 years, whatever.
Yeah. And I think it's a reminder for me too, like how fast things change as far as like how to operate a band. Like even like the idea of like making an Instagram account for your band was so foreign like 5 years ago. And now it's like bands have entire like TikTok strategies of how their song release. And, I think a lot of people listening could get upset about like, okay, well, what's actually like DIY and what's hardcore and rooted in that. And I do think that's a fair argument. But at the same time, I think like anything that's pushing the envelope just a little bit more, I think I would rather see that than us trying to go backwards.
Same. And Grant, again, I'm almost 30. I think you're a little bit older than me, ? But
I'm 29. So
okay. I'm also 29. Never mind. Okay. We're on the same
29 gang on the pod.
I was like, you're either 29 or 33, one of the two. And yeah, like the TikTok strategy bands, stuff like that. I don't think I'm that far or anything. I think I'm pretty like, please don't include me. I don't hate it. I'm just like, not for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just, that is something that I think has just like been totally foreign to me. And I'm just like, I don't know, man, go to shows. Like, like that, that's just kind of all I can think of. I'm like, go to shows. If you go to shows, start bands, you're still going to shows. It'll grow on its own. It'll grow on its own, and you will grow as an individual.
Yes, I think the term TikTok strategy, I maybe want to add to that, where it's like shit like that. I think actually matters if you're playing in a band as big as Knocked Loose, as Turnstile. Like, I don't think it's about only focusing on like that when it's like you have one song and like write more music.
Yeah. When you're like first starting out, and like if you're first starting out, you're in your first 6 months of being in a band, and for some reason you're like huge on TikTok, and like you have like 2 songs out or something like that. Right. Something about it, I think, just rubs people the wrong way, or at least rubs me the wrong way. And I'm just like, I don't even know if I'm going to give this a shot. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, okay. If I could make a comparison that's very specific to Vatican having the quote unquote viral moment, and Hosian and Tom and John, we all talked about this.
The gamers rise up moment.
The gamers rise up. Like that wasn't planned. It wasn't like something that was forced. It wasn't something that like, okay, we have to do this and then it's going to blow up and we're going to like send it to all these websites. It just naturally happened. And the band had badass music and like a history and a past behind them to support that. So
Exactly.
if your band has one song that blows up on TikTok, that's great, but it's like it's more about like, I think it's about people discovering the band and then going down the rabbit hole versus like I'm at the early stages. And like this is something that we could go on forever about. I just think that it's like one of my we brought up terror, and like my favorite thing that Scott said during our podcast was like, if you're so concerned with selling out shows, then maybe you actually sold out. And I feel like you could twist the words a little bit where it's like, if you're just concerned with getting big on TikTok, then maybe you should check yourself a little bit. I think you should just write dope badass music that like you're super proud of, and then the universe will decide if it wants you to be as big a band as you want to.
Yeah, and this is universal. This isn't just about like hardcore either. And like this kind of mentality is like, I'm sure I could speak for a number of bands right now when they say this, but like this is like definitely like the Vatican mentality, or like that's specifically like the mentality of like some of my favorite directors of like video games and stuff. Totally. Like I recently read this interview with Miyazaki, the From Software Dark Souls man, and he was like, he did this interview and it's like, oh, this is Elden Ring. It's the biggest game that you guys have ever done. Like this is completely outsold all of your games in their entire lifespan so far. It's been out for like 3 months. Is this something you think about or you expect or anything like that? And his answer is so simple, but like, so like, this dude gets it. He goes, we don't actually ever think about our expectations. We just make things we want to make. And he said nothing else about it. And I'm just like, that's
respect. That's so sick.
He says that, and I just see like that gif of like The Rock with like the one eyebrow up, and he's just, you know what I mean? I'm just like, God, you just flamed that response. Like, that's so sick. But at the same time, like that should be carrying over into all art, if you think about it, but especially in like metal and hardcore, considering the spirit of it and the community, the communal side of everything. It should just really be about making what you want and partaking in the event and the communal aspect of everything, but make what you want. Everything else will work itself out.
I think I grew up on Nintendo and like the 64, also Super Nintendo as well. That's what my grandma had. So I would always rock Yoshi's Story when I was over there in Super Mario Bros. As I got older, I realized I have such an insane respect for them as a company because like, and I'm wearing a fucking Halo shirt and like, that's a huge part of who I am as well, but for different reasons. I think the thing that I always, and I realized later on in life, is that Nintendo just like, to a fault, would always do whatever they wanted to.
Yep.
Things that I felt like were super underrated, like the GameCube and like super great games like Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, all that like groundbreaking stuff, whether it was like super praised or praised later as far as like the timing of when it was released. But then Nintendo would make like a cardboard game that you would wear, and I'm like, that's not it, Chief. But we'll move on to the next thing. And like I grew up on Halo 2, but I just feel like Microsoft and Sony are just like a little too like corporatized, and like things just get lost in the sauce. And they're like, we're listening to our fans, but then it's like certain executives are actually just making these decisions, and it's just creating a huge clusterfuck of problems.
It is a clusterfuck, and I think it especially really comes down to those platforms, especially like they're like the people who do like all of their like distribution, like we could say like an EA or an Activision, what have you. The problem is that they don't let like the studio make what they really, really want to make. And
right.
You say Halo and I think Bungie and I think Destiny. And I'm like, that is such a great example of an awesome studio that has like obviously a legacy of making one of the biggest franchises ever conceived and not being allowed to do what they want to do. It's like, you should just let them, because they made Halo Combat Evolved on a whim for fun, not thinking the game was going to be big. And then whenever they got slated for a sequel, they're basically like, okay, we're going to try now.
Right.
Which is why Halo 2 is so fucking fire.
Dude. Yeah, no, and to tie it back to music, because this is like a hardcore podcast. It's
yeah.
I feel as though the bigger that bands rise, there's that potential of like, oh, like now you have to work with a producer. Now you have to. But I think great bands can be fully self-aware of like where they actually need help and where they need to hold those cards close to their chest. So,
yep.
And I'm sure that's come into discussions with, Vatican, getting bigger and bigger as you guys are. But I think a lot of the spirit, as you were talking about, is like giving opportunities to people who are like some kid in Indiana or some kid in Calgary to like write some riffs, put it on the internet, and let the world decide. And I think that's like super awesome that we're in that place now where there isn't like the true gatekeeping that was in like the 90s and even the early 2000s, where it was like,
yep.
If you want to be heard by people, you have to go through these measures. Now it's like,
yep.
You could drop something online and it can explode if it's that good.
Straight up. And then that's just yours. That's your thing. And you don't answer to anybody with it other than yourself. And that is a very special thing to have in this kind of community. So yeah. And a little hard to do and to come by. So whenever you have it, hang on for dear life, please.
So let's use that as a bit of a segue to talk about your entry into this band. And I think like anytime a band goes through like a, guitarists are a dime a dozen, bass players, you just insert someone who's shitty at guitar to play bass. Drummers is like maybe a little bit finicky because there's definitely a lot of personality that goes into that. But it can be someone that can just do the job. Yeah. Vocalist is like, I think the hardest thing for a band to make that switch and for it to work. And I think with Vatican, it really has worked because like to me, there maybe at the beginning, I would see a couple people that would compare, but now it doesn't feel like any of those voices are even heard. So when you were coming into that band, did you feel that pressure of like, oh, I got to really like step up to the game here? Or were you just like, I'm just going to do my thing?
Yeah, I felt insane pressure. And I remember like doing like first demos and stuff with the guys. I just was like so upfront with them, and I was like, do you want me to like do the whittle thing? Do you want me to kind of like try and like step in and do like a similar thing to what John was doing before? Cause I totally can't. Right. And like, I don't know if like you guys are married to like how he writes songs. I can definitely kind of like emulate like what is it that you like are wanting? And the answer I got like really just kind of was perfect, because they were just like, hey man, we asked you to join the band because we liked you before you were in our band.
Right.
You do your thing. We'll tell you if we think it sucks. And I was like, okay, so I'll do my thing. And, then that's like the 2-song release that we put out in April of last year, Become a New God. That was the result of that. So yeah. They really, really let me do straight up whatever I want. And, we actually really worked closely together on those, which like in my previous experience in music, usually I am given a completed song, and then they're just like, write the lyrics, Mike. I go in, I track everything, and I'm like, this is the song, and everyone's like, that's the song. We just kind of like move on kind of thing. And this was like the first time I was like, oh, I'm like actually like in the lab with these guys right now. So like we really, as a whole, not just me making what I want, as a whole, make what we want on every end of the spectrum. And it was a match made in heaven, you know. Like I remember my first week of being down in Savannah and like really getting to hang out with the guys, being very nervous and very anxious because I didn't know them super well, but it was instant. And that comes down to like the social and the musical side of everything. So like we really just hit it off, and going into the full length from there, you know, that was even more involved. And that's where, you know, obviously like we went and did it with Randy LaBeouf, and Randy was in on the process as well. And it's a very funny thing whenever you like work with a producer, especially if you don't know them prior or know them well at all. And they just ask you the question, like, do you want me to just hit record and you do the thing that you wrote, and like I won't even get in your way or whatever, or do you want me in this with you? And I was like, no, I want you in with me. Like, I'm an open book. You can ask me anything. Like, we can talk about what the songs are about. I don't care. So it was and that kind of relationship went to every corner of the band, whether it was guitar, drums, bass, any of the synth or electronic industrial shit. Like, we, all six of us were going in back and forth. And like, even my wife was helping me out with lyrics and stuff when I'm like panicking, because like, I'm like, I don't know, I think I'm overthinking this song, like, or whatever. And I like send her a voice memo, because my wife is a genius and she's an amazing musician. So like, sometimes when I freak out about stuff like this, I can be like, can you tell me if I'm sucking ass right now or if I'm like good? Because I can't see whether what I'm doing is good or not right now. And that I like send her a voice memo, and she's like, yeah, like, you're definitely overthinking this. I'm going to stretch this out a little bit, like butter and like butter over bread, and make this make more sense. And I'm like, okay, yes, I need that right now. I'm panicking.
I do think that it is interesting though, because when you work with a producer or someone that's like holding up a mirror to you while you're in the studio, when you're playing an instrument that kind of just requires you to kind of like move some part of like the outwardness of your body, it's you know, like, and I'm speaking off of just, you know, recording like last month, and you know, like, I put these fucking glasses on the entire time I was recording, but then it was a bit like that tremolo part was a little like off. Let's do that again, and you just kind of, you know, go back and do that. What's interesting about vocals is that it's like, you know, you're conveying emotion, you know, while it's not just like hit the drums hard. Oh, it's being emotive. It's like you're trying to be emotive. It's like, you know, dealing with the inside of your body, and it's dealing with like, you know, a varying degree of different personal things depending on the songwriter. So it's like, I feel like whoever's producing needs to like, it can't just be like, I think you can do that better, or like, let's go again, or like, hey, do you actually need to take like a fiver, or things like that. Like, did you have that experience or?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, there'd be times where I come in and I have this song, and like, I present it how I hear the song. And, you know, it typically is just me and Randy in that moment. Like, everyone else gets kicked out of the control room and stuff, just because extra noise, you know, stuff like that. But like, I present how I hear the song. Randy listens to it a couple times, and like I email him all the lyrics and everything, and we have everything down, and like we like tear it apart. You know, we're just like, does this convey what you actually mean, kind of thing? Like, does this even read well? Also, if you perform it like this, will it come off the way that it's supposed to, kind of thing? And like, so it doesn't just come down to like what did that scream sound dope? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it doesn't come down to that. And like, I really appreciated that because, and Randy's not my first good producer I've ever worked with or anything like that. But it's still like a hard thing to find. And, I hope every producer in the world, will just ask that question. Like, do you want me in the lab with you, or do you want me to hit record and let you do your thing?
Right.
Especially with singers. Cause like, dude, it's a very ego driven thing to be a singer in a band for the most part. And even like the people who have like some of the healthiest egos can be pretty easily broken down, especially in the studio. And I've been on the receiving end of that before, and like thought like going in like that, like I was a pretty good singer and like I like kind of had it on lockdown. And then like all of a sudden 3 hours later, I'm like, am I good at this? So like there's so many little things about like being a singer and recording a record and working with someone that is not in your project, letting them in on it, and also like knowing for sure that they're absolutely in your corner and like want to make something amazing with you. Because like, dude, and this usually translates in records, like whether or not like they did just hit record and go, and like the record's kind of whatever. And then there are some records that can be like profoundly emotive, and you're just like, dude, this has so much character to it, or like, and I could like, name some examples and stuff, but it's just hard to find that. And Randy in particular has found a number of bands that he can be that way with, because his catalog of stuff that he's worked on, especially in the last like 4 years total, just awesome. Like he's done like Boundaries record, he's done Dying Wish, he's done Us, that new Orthodox is getting ready to come out soon. If we could start going down the list of a number, or Kublai Khan, like some bands, it's just like I can tell that when Randy entered the mix with X band, just elevated and like found this like very rich in character outcome
Right.
with those bands records. So it's just cool. It's a great experience.
Yeah, I'm definitely like, I would say like a few pegs down from doing a full record that has that much involvement from a third party that's outside of the band. We just did an EP where 2 of the songs, we got Chris from Stick to Your Guns to help produce and rip it apart and do that. And I wish that we had the budget and the time and all of that
for sure
to do it for the whole thing, because those songs specifically, I'm like, all the songs are great, but it's those 2 that just feel a little bit more. And that's just on the instrumentation. Like, we didn't really do much else on the vocal side of things, but it's like, it is really important to do that, especially on a full record, because someone that I look up to told me that like any band can put out a snoozer like EP that just doesn't hit, and they can recover from it and they can do something else. That's
exactly
no problem. When a record kind of tanks and you don't put your all into that, that's where it's harder to recover. So
totally,
like I'm sure, like, this isn't the first record that Vatican has done, but this is your first record on it. So it's like,
yep,
you don't want to hold any punches off of that.
Yeah, no, I can't. And that kind of comes back to the expectation versus make what you want to make thing.
Yeah.
And I definitely really had to, and even after recording it, leading up to the very day the record came out, my feelings could change every 30 minutes, depending, like however my mood swings with it, and being like, oh shit, this might be like it, like this, like these might be songs like people like really care about, or like, then like listening and be like, oh shit, maybe I should trash it or something like that. Especially like it is like the band's second full length record, and and I am a new singer, and the only material you had to go off of to decide whether or not you were down for me being in the band is 2 songs. So you figure it out, you know what I mean? And
Right. The
like
stakes are high.
yeah, and both of those songs are sub 3 minutes, so you're just kind of so I'm just like, hey, I've got not a lot to go on, but like just give me a shot, because like I am proud of the record, and we made what we wanted to make, unapologetically. So it was a risk, and I'm happy about it, and I think it was worth it. So yeah, I hope people are fucking with it. It looks like people are fucking with it, but it's nerve wracking, and you know, at the same time though, like I've been in the band for almost 2 years now. So at this point, like those feelings, like what we were talking about earlier about stepping into a singer's position, especially one that had already been around for a while, like Vatican started in 2015. So, you know, people are already really married to John's voice at that point. And there have been some hilarious YouTube comments or like Lamgo comments, like not digging me. And it's awesome.
Oh,
like
dude,
there was this one dude, this person like totally just destroyed me, like killed me. And it was hilarious. He said, new vocalist sounds like he does YouTube covers. The cool days of this band are long gone.
Oh my God.
And
what a weird insult. This guy sounds like he does YouTube covers. Like,
which I'm like, I don't like necessarily follow like YouTube vocalists or anything, but there are some good ones. You know what I mean?
Like a very early podcast episode, I got to interview JT, who now sings for Era.
Yes.
And I was watching his shit like all the time, and then when he joined up with Texas, I'm like, great for him. You know, you like that's baffling to me that someone is upset that because I did a cover on YouTube that like diminishes my credibility as a musician. Like,
or even like just saying like I sound like one of those kinds of people, which like and dude, like again, I come from like a fucking like very metalcore heavy background. Like I am involved in hardcore and partake in the communal aspect of hardcore and going to shows and shit. But like, dude, like when I was learning how to scream, I was screaming to Azalee dying and Black Dahlia murder. Like I'm sorry. Like this is just my vibe. And but it was hilarious. Either way, I read that and I was like, yeah, you fucking got my ass. That's awesome.
I think hate comments or anyone that and I'm doing that, I'm learning this more as both my band and my brand as far as scoped exposure is like the bigger that it gets, the more just out of pocket whatever people are gonna say things. And I think it's weird too, especially when I get a hate comment, but it's like directed at the band. And it's like, it's definitely wild, but it's like, I'm the, you know, so anyways, that's a whole rabbit hole. But I will say when someone has some comedy that they inputted into their like hate speech, like that, I'm going to just use that term. It's like, okay, I respect that you put a little bit of thought versus like bad, this sucks. Music, you know, like if you're like, oh, okay, like, you know, I'll give kudos where that's due at least.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, like again, it's just like, dude, you got my ass. Like, here's your W. Like,
yeah,
I have no notes.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the record. Something that, you know, anyone who's a fan of the band, as far as Vatican is concerned, is obviously like there's you know, a ton of love for video games. We've talked extensively about, you know, Halo and Nintendo already a lot on this podcast. And I definitely hear a lot more like industrial, like nods to like, this is music that I would hear before like the big boss comes out and fights me kind of thing. And a big thing in video games that I've always obsessed over is like Easter eggs and like little like references to things that you would just randomly find or stumble upon. Is there any, and obviously with certain Easter eggs, you want to leave that for discovery, but is there Easter eggs in the album A? And is there one that you want to make mention of?
There definitely are. And it's very much littered like throughout, and they're just little sprinkles, right? But like one that I think is particularly fun and showing my age is the Knights of the Old Republic 2 reference that I make in Where Heavens Collide in the second verse.
Okay.
It's excellent game. Doesn't get talked about enough because everyone talks about the first Knights of the Old Republic, but the second one has a lot of, especially in Star Wars, my favorite just kind of like overall dialogue about the issue of the Jedi versus the Sith, and the way that both sides are at fault, and that truly only sitting somewhere in the middle is where like there's like actual tranquility within the Force and shit, dude.
Right.
Like it in just terms of like the Star Wars story and the dialogue of good versus evil, that game goes hard as fuck. And they don't pull any punches. And the first one is like very like a Star Wars game. You are like the Jedi are trying to fight the Sith, right. Figure it out, like, but the second one is like, it is definitely much more steeped in ambiguity and a lot of things that are left up to your own interpretation of what is like good or wrong. And I just make a fun little reference for a second in that song. And in the same song, I also reference something from Nier Automata. And both of these things have my own spin on them, but I'm just like, if you'll be able to hear that and be like, is this from this one part? And like, it is. Yeah, it is because the way it was, the way the game portrayed it, I'm like, yeah, this conveys the feeling I'm trying to capture. What if I just reskin it and be like, this is my thing, Yeah. So there's a lot. It's littered throughout the whole record.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure, I hope that maybe it's needed to have like a fucking scorecard for anyone that can pull all like the different references and different things.
Oh God, I would love that.
I like that you made mention of all the that Star Wars reference, just more so because I've been rewatching all of the Star Wars and I'm working like prequels first into all of that. And one of my favorite Jedi growing up was Qui-Gon because he was like, definitely more good than bad. But
he's so
like,
sick.
He like called out like the very like religious undertones of the Jedi Council at times, and it was like really,
exactly.
Yeah, like I think it's things with like Ahsoka as well as like she's great. She's not like she doesn't even call herself a Jedi anymore. So there's like a lot of things on there. So that's cool. I think like paying homage and doing little references like that is like super dope. Can I share with you one little thing with my band? Just because I think you'd get a kick out of it. So I play in a band called Endgame. We're all big video game fans as well. When I was writing the first song off of a split, that was our pandemic release. There's like kind of like a elongated intro that has kind of like, we have a lot of like thrashy kind of power chord kind of parts. And there was one part where I was like, why does this sound super familiar? And I realized it was like I had written the Halo like da 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 da.
Yeah.
But it's like one note off, so I can get away with it.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's more minor than major or something. So I was like, okay, well, we like, we can get away with it. It still sounds like a thrash riff, but it's only if you say it, it's like obvious. And then like, we're adding more parts to the song. We're, getting towards the end. And I realized that the demo that I wrote was like just wavering between 3 minutes and 42 seconds and 3 minutes and 44 seconds, depending on like how long the ring out
Yep.
was. And even though I purely believe that Bungie made way better Halo games than 343, I was like, I
Yes.
feel like it would be a sin if this song name that has the Halo riff didn't like clock in at 3 minutes and 43 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
very poetic.
yeah, so that was our
No, that's
little
awesome.
nod to it. So yeah,
That's very awesome.
I'll send you the track afterwards, and you can tell me
Please.
if I'm gonna get copyright striked or anything.
I mean, dude, like that's like the name of the game being in Vatican is like wondering if someone is going to copyright us on some shit like that, because like we definitely are like towing a fine line, because like even on like some of like the sounds that we put in the record, dude, like we put some funny shit in there, and like it's usually warped or buried in some kind of way. And so like it's straight up just, unless one of us like really walk you through it, you probably won't find it. There's one song in the record that has I believe it is 16 different versions of a very iconic sound from a very iconic franchise, but it is just warped and buried, and all 16 different versions of it play at the exact same time in one just little moment, like with like the hit of a breakdown. Like you just won't catch it unless you know it's there. But I'm just like, yeah, we're really doing this, huh? It's like, well, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like
I think the difference there is like when you're able to take something that, is quote unquote established and still make it new. And I think that's the whole thing, because I grew up on YouTube, so I followed a lot of different YouTubers throughout the years. And one specifically that I follow is like very much an advocate for like copyright or not copyright, but fair use. So like,
yes,
whether it's reaction channels or things like that, like there is an element of like watching a trailer and then watching a reaction to that trailer of like an established Star Wars YouTuber or Halo or Pokemon or whatever it is. It adds another layer. And I think that's maybe the way that a lot of bands can kind of skid out of that, because it is adding just another layer to that thing versus like, like I'm sure I don't know if like the band A Willem Scream has like been nervous about just their band being called that, of being sued by the guy that like recorded the audio.
Yeah.
But I just think it's hilarious. And I think it's really cool for bands to be able to play in different their music taps into other worlds like gaming or like sports or whatever it is, whatever flag you want to fly.
Exactly. And I mean, it really just comes from like the spirit of like play. Like play is like a very important aspect of, well, just making music in general, but like the way Vatican works is the element of play is like so present in everything that we do. And if it's not there, we're usually looking at the demo file and we're like, I don't know about this one. And that's why a lot of those kinds of things and end up making their way onto a final version of a record. And you're just like, that's kind of funny. And I'm like, that's the point. And like that, like, or just like paying homage to like some of those things that we love, in our own way. And I'm like, that, I don't know. It's just like, that's the spirit of the whole thing. And, that is why the record sounds the way it does. It's like, there's just so much play and just like, like there's play and there's worship of things that we loved from before, and just kind of like putting it all together in like this weird fucking love letter that is this like 14 song record.
Right. I want to echo you there, because I feel like there are times where people force this the spooky sample or like this thing, and it kind of just feels that way, versus it's a happy accident, like the 343 thing for me, or like the riff, or like I'm sure there was ideas where it's like we have to do this, but there's a ton of ideas like, well, why can't we do this? Like a lot of people don't
Yes.
know, but when I had Jem and Josh from Speed on the podcast, Jem for the second time, Josh for his first time, the whole like air horn thing on "We See You" was
Oh yeah.
purely a fluke. It was purely like our producer would do that in a way to like watermark a song that it's like, this is not the finished version. And then they're like, why can't we keep this on the final draft? And then it
Yeah.
goes out, and like I won't say that that band blew up just off of an air horn sample, but I definitely think it helped, like but I think
There's
it's
always like some semblance of fuck it that can really that can
yes.
really land it for
Yes.
for people whenever they do stuff like that, and like they just like, okay, full send, fuck it. Like this is how I hear the song now at this point. Like this is how you're gonna fucking hear the song. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
That's sick.
What to you is the most important song lyrically when it comes to Ultra for you? Such a big question that turned off your video.
Yeah, no, that was my low battery warning.
No, that's fine.
I would say the song that is the most important to me lyrically. And I was talking with my wife about this. And this is like a little like TMI, like, familial issues and stuff. But I would say the most important song is By Your Love. Because By Your Love is like a part 4 of I wrote 4 songs about my dad on the record, who I have a very complicated and like just, just messy relationship with. I wrote 4 songs about my dad. Each of them is in a slightly different perspective, but By Your Love is, for me, especially like as a 29-year-old dude, I'm like recently married. And this is my first record, and being in a new band, I've been in a very particular liftoff point of my own life personally, of just like shooting off into a new era. And when I listen to By Your Love, I think about forgiveness when it comes to those kinds of things, like with my dad and stuff, but not the kind of forgiveness where like I call him up and I say, we're cool now, let's go forward and like try and fix our relationship. It is more like the kind of forgiveness. It's like, that's really just for me, because I don't think I'll get any further if I don't forgive you. I think I've gone through the motions of being so mad and so like beat up about like things earlier in my life, and like holding on to a lot of shit. And whenever I wrote that song, like the chorus like really speaks for itself, just in the first line, like saying like, our seething blood will determine what we will be. Like, not in a way of like, it's like basically just saying like, I'm going to take all of this and like, I'm going to be whatever I want to. And I don't have to be like you. In so many different ways, right? It's a very complex and complicated thing for anyone to say that and to also do it. But like, I think that's the important one. I think it was my first step in doing that. And like, I recorded that song a year ago and I still wrestle with it. And I wrestle with all of them. But that song in particular, when I listen to that, that's kind of, sometimes that can be like a mental check-in, like for me, and be like, where are we at right now? How do you feel about this today? Because I do feel that way. It's like, I was probably going to be, I was probably not going to get anywhere further along in my growth without being able to say, this is something I have to do.
Do you, as, someone who clearly gives a fuck about what they write about, do you struggle with like what you're writing a song about, as far as like, I don't know if my opinion on this is going to change, and if that's going to wrestle with like how like you were saying, you wrote that song a year ago, but like you're still like in the mix of it, and And I think about that just idea just because like, you know, there's Brian from Knocked Loose is forever like one of the most viewed podcast episodes that we've ever done. So like there's a lot of people that will still like, I'll still get comments about that specifically being like, but he said he's not straight edge and now he is. And it's like this whole thing. It's like, well, why can't music just be like a still picture of that person in that time? And why is change your mind on a specific thing, even like going from here to here versus like here to here? You know what I'm saying? Like
exactly.
Like, I feel like change your mind is like thinking that you go 180 when there are people that do 180 turns around. Like people, you know, someone could be in a straight edge band, break edge, and then they're like fully on, you know, crazy, you know, drug watch. Like
totally.
But you know, there's some people that just do it because it's like, yeah, this is something that's not for me anymore. But I don't know if you have any thoughts around that when it comes to like how you feel about the music that you write and how that changes.
I definitely do. And I do view it as a very like time, like a captured moment in a time and place of a person's life. Be that talking about straight edge or like familial issues, the way you feel about like, you know, like a relationship that you're in. Like, I mean, we could use like a huge example and say like The Only Exception by Paramore. Like that's obvious. That obviously does not hold the same weight it does with the person that wrote it anymore. Right. So like,
yeah, no, that's a great example.
Yeah. Or like, so in this case, I I think I was just like, so like over the top with it and like felt so, I had so many different feelings on like that subject in particular. I was like, I'll write 4 songs about them. That way, if anyone's like, well, did you change your mind? They'll be like, well, I gave 4 different options about how I feel about it. And so if you ever catch me later in life being like, nope, I'm mad as fuck and revenge is on my mind or, you know, I don't know. Like,
that's the song that we're playing on this tour versus the other 3.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
Like, so I think like in a way it's just kind of like, yeah, I kind of like provided my own answer by doing something like that. But also like, I mean, like I said, I was in bands previously before Vatican and like, I've definitely written some stuff that I've written songs I regret, you know what I mean? Like just like contextually, I'm like, yeah, I think I was way too immature to talk about that at the time.
Yeah.
And because of that, I'm never going to revisit it. And you can all just forget I ever said it.
Yeah. I can't remember who said it on the podcast, but it was kind of recently where it was like, I've revisited lyrics where I'm like, oh, can we just chill out a little bit, you know? So versus
dude, I've totally done that.
Yeah.
And like there are a couple church songs, especially on like the first church song record I listened to. And I'm like, dude, shut up. And I'm just like, who do you think you are? like what do you think you have to add to this conversation? You are you're a fucking idiot. Real quick, I'm going to try something just because my phone is close to dying.
Yeah.
I want to test audio while charging. How are we feeling right
now? I think we're still waiting for it to switch over.
Oh yeah, that's mad quiet on my end.
Yo. Check.
Oh yeah, that's I can hear you vaguely, but
okay.
Let me see.
We're heading towards the end anyways, so we can start to go to the wrap up if that's okay.
This isn't gonna let me go full Discord mode. Okay, that's okay. Stop there. Okay, we went on the charger for a second. Maybe we got a little bit more juice out of that. So this
off of the 2 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, right? You know, time's relative, but
yeah.
But yeah, man. When it comes to lyrics, and even if it's like when it comes to lyrics on Ultra, I feel, especially when it comes to lyrics on Ultra now, because I am more mature and I've had experience of cringing at like my previous work and stuff like that. I typically always ask myself before something is like final or I want to show anyone, the first thing I ask, and I think anyone should do this, is this worth saying? Like, is this worth talking about at all? Whether it's personal or you feel like you want to add yourself to a larger conversation. Because I am much more hesitant to add myself to a larger conversation, because not in a way where like I fear that conversation, but definitely in a way of maybe it's just doesn't fucking matter. Like if I want to talk about that, maybe it's not my fucking place. And that's a lesson for everyone that everyone could learn, and I'm sure have added themselves into conversations that they shouldn't be in. And that can feel a little time and placey for the current political state in America right now. But like definitely something where it's just like, maybe I need to recognize my lane a lot more. Right. So I always ask that question, is this worth me saying? And I think that can go either way.
I think that there was a lot of times, especially over the pandemic, where I realized like sometimes I don't need to say anything. I just need to uplift other people, like with whatever like platform that I have through this podcast. Like sometimes it doesn't need to be my words, but it could just be me increasing the volume of someone else's voice. Just
making space for someone to be able to do what they need to do in that moment. And that, again, that's a range of subjects. That's definitely not one dimensional, but yeah, definitely something that I think anyone, doesn't matter how old, how you are, how new to this, how much of a veteran you are, always worth asking. Is it worth me saying something about this? And if you're just like, move on, scrap it. Like, that's how I feel personally. So I hope I don't cringe at any of my shit from this record that I just put out in like 2 years or something like that. But I tried my best to vet and make sure that didn't happen.
Yeah, you've done your due diligence. So Mike, just being cautious of your battery life, I just got a couple other questions, then we start to wrap up the show.
Yeah.
Off the top of your head, and you don't need to say why, this is fully, you can talk some shit. What are the top 3 worst fandoms in nerd culture?
Okay, it's Dragon Ball, it's Star Wars, and it's definitely Dragon Ball and Star Wars. And then I'll say Game of Thrones, and I've never fucking watched Game of Thrones.
That's actually a really good pick. And I'm sure a lot of people are angry, but I feel like the truth hurts, you know?
Yeah. And that one is like a little bit more vague for me, but so I'm not even going to touch base on it. Sure. If anyone feels perturbed about that,
don't come for me in my DMs. We can talk at Star Wars because I'm vetted in that.
I can talk Star Wars and Dragon Ball, and I can say it with my chest. With that, I'm just going to leave. I'm going to leave that one, and you can feel however you want or feel nothing. I just think your fandom sucks. But Dragon Ball, one of the worst fandoms ever conceived. Star Wars, one of the worst fandoms ever conceived. Anytime something new Star Wars comes out, it is like straight up some of the most like vile, just like verbal vomit bullshit can come out of people's mouths about Star Wars. And like, I just want to like set the precedent as a Star Wars fan and as a Dragon Ball fan. I feel the same way about both of these things, and I'm in both.
Right.
This shit is not actually even that good. Like, it's really not even that good for any of us to be upset about any of this shit.
Right.
Move on. Like,
yeah.
Like me trying to fucking explain Glup Shido to someone, or explain a Goku transformation to someone, dude, some of the worst words to leave my mouth, but I know all of it.
The worst words ever to be uttered. Okay. Final question before we wrap up. tell me a mosh related story to end this episode, and that's anything that's first your head. It could be you, could be something you just saw at a show, could be just a friend of a friend told you this crazy story, whatever's the first to your head.
I remember one time I was playing in Cincinnati. I was probably like 21 years old, so this is a while back. And it's like a Conqueror's like church tongue tour, and we're all sick as fuck. And all of us ended up actually having pneumonia, but it was our last show. We're heading back to Indianapolis. We play this basement, and I know of a number of people that have had experiences like this, but basically this dude was just fucking piss poor drunk, and he just moshed, genitals out. And like, it was just, I don't know, man, it was just crazy, and it smelled crazy in there. And like,
oh no. We lost him right at that story. So, of course, as soon as Michael's talking about someone moshing with their dick out, that the podcast gets shut down because his phone dies. But this was too good of a story not to pass up. So let's tell it from the top, and then we'll move towards the end here.
Yeah, I mean, so like not that the story is long, but the short version of it is basically that dude's moshing, balls, dick and balls are out. And I'm sick as a dog. I can hardly even like actually comprehend what is happening pretty much. And at one point he like moshes into me, and we're like at the end of the song. I just remember like getting on the mic and being like, never in my life did I picture just cock and balls hitting me while I was singing a metalcore song. Like, just
you haven't made it as a metalcore artist unless you've been moshed on by a naked person before.
Yeah, and I mean, like, this person's just hammered, and I'm just, you know what? I hope they had a great time.
I hope they look back on that night fondly.
Yeah, straight up.
Well, Michael, don't get okay. Dude, this has been honestly a fantastic conversation. You're a great interviewee. I feel like you and I could talk for another hour if we really wanted to. Maybe if
we probably could.
If your phone was more charged or things like that. But like, honestly, like, it was really fun chatting. I'm really stoked that you're a part of the Vatican team, and I feel like you're bringing a lot to it. All your links, the band links to the album, will all be in the description in the YouTube. But if there's anything you want to shout out, anything you want to plug, or anything you want to send the people off before we wrap up, the floor is yours.
Listen to Ultra by Vatican. It is a cool record. There's something in there for a little bit of everybody, and we put a lot into it, and I'm very proud of it. Also, check out my wife's EP. She goes under the name iris.exe. It's awesome. She had a huge hand in the record, and she is also the person featured at the end of the record on that last song. Mm-hmm. So if you're fucking with that at all, go check out her music. If you can just click, because I'm sure it shows up right there. It's like Vatican. I click it. The EP is called Smile. It's fucking sick. It is so much better than what so many people are doing, and she is so amazing and just literally crushing my entire world with the weight of her unimaginable talent. And she could be crushing your world as well. She's awesome. So listen to those two records, because they are both good.
I don't think I've ever had someone plug their wife's music over their own as hard as you did, and I respect that. It's
better than the Vatican record. That's how I feel. So,
right.
Dude, it's really good, and I'm on the record. So is Emma from Dying Wish. I don't know, man. If you're just looking for like more things to sell it, I'm
definitely gonna check it out. Yeah,
it's so cool, man. And I think everyone would love it. Like, if you go from start to finish, you'll just be like, what the fuck did I just listen to? It's so good. But yes, please listen to that.
Definitely gonna check that out. Definitely go listen to Ultra. Vatican has a pretty healthy amount of touring in the next little while. And so definitely catch a date if that's coming to your neck of the woods. Um, Definitely want to have you back on the show, Mike. I feel like now that I know that you're a Star Wars head, I feel like we could dedicate an entire episode's worth to that. But
Yes,
that will be at a future date. I hope that our paths cross in the near future. And thank you so much again for coming on the show.
dude, it has been a fucking pleasure. Yes, I would love to do an episode 2 sometime, and I'm sure we could go way deeper in on that stuff. And also, if I'm not on tour, it means I don't have a battery life we have to get around.
Right. Yeah. No, I feel like all that's great. And yeah, dude, thanks again for coming on. This was a blast.
Of course, dude. Peace and love, brother.